got to get the lighting right, Councillor Turland. Shining off.
I was told by the mediator to dress up a bit.
Dress up a bit, yeah. Got a nice shirt on.
Mr. Mayor.
He's got to be kidding, surely.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for those who are watching live stream. And the council is functioning back to normal as it was before the COVID scare last week or the week prior. But the other thing I'd just like to remind councillors of is that it is the 11th month and the 11th hour. I laid a wreath at the Mossvale Cenotaph this morning, but just for councillors and those watching to reflect that today was the 11th day of the 11th hour. So just acknowledging Remembrance Day today. Can I ask Councillor Halstead to please open the meeting with acknowledgement of country?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I acknowledge the traditional custodians to this land and pay my respect to elders both past and present. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today.
Thank you. And I'll open the meeting with civic prayer as well. Almighty God, from whom comes every gift and perfect gift, we give you thanks for the blessings you bestow upon us in your shire. Grant to those who hold office in this council the spirit of justice and truth, of wisdom and charity, that mindful of our responsibility, we may promote the welfare of your people and advance the common good. Amen. We don't have any apologies today, so we will go for the adoption of the previous minutes on the correctness of them. Would somebody like to move those of the 28th of October? Move Councillor McLaughlin, second Councillor Halstead. Is there any correction to the minutes? Then I'll Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Turtle.
Yeah, no, 18.3, which related to the removal of the Station Street pin oaks. The question I left and was agreed by the acting general manager was that the motion that was approved a few months ago, which relates to public consultation, because working in a road reserve, would be upheld. Now that motion has been approved, and it was agreed that that would be brought forward or investigated. It's not in this business paper.
No, I don't believe it is, and I don't believe that was the outcome, but I'll defer to the General Manager, Acting General Manager.
Look, through you, Mr. Mayor, my recollection of that conversation, and it's only my recollection, was that Councillor Turley made a statement about a motion being passed, and I think I said I would take that on notice and go away and check that. I've done that. We've not been able to locate that particular motion, so I guess I'm happy to have a conversation with you, Councillor Turley, offline. I'm struggling to find what you're pointing to, but I'm happy to have a conversation with you offline.
I will email it to you,
Okay.
which says the motion's been approved.
Okay, then on the correctness of the minutes, then I put it all in favour. Please raise your card. Those against, carry. We now move to declarations of interest. Does any councillor have any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Then we go, there is no mayoral minute. Now we have two items on public forum and two visitor items, but the first is on item 12.3, adoption of the Southern Highlands Destination Strategy 2020 to 2030, and Mr. Mark Bourne will address council against the recommendation. So are you there, Mr. Bourne, or are you coming online? He's coming online, so when that happens...
He's there.
can you hear me, Mr. Bourne?
Yeah, I can, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right, yeah.
So, if you heard the introduction, the floor is yours, and, you know the timeframes, whatever, so away you go.
Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to address Council today on the matter of the originally titled Draft Destination Management Plan, or as it's now proposed today, a destination strategy. I must admit to everyone, I find it slightly incomprehensible that I'm here today, mainly because it's beyond me how anyone can propose to our elected councillors any document, be it called a plan or strategy, that is devoid of sufficient detail or meaningful purpose, contains basic errors and misrepresentation of statistics and data to the tune of $425 million, has no timelines for delivery, contains no detailed actions to be carried out, has no defined measures of progress, success, or failure, can in any way be sufficient to drive meaningful progress in the region's tourism and economic sectors for the next 10 years. In my 20 years experience working in business, industry strategic planning and delivery at a regional, state and national level, along with industry development and projects, this draft plan sadly may be the worst document I have ever seen. Quite frankly, it's an embarrassment and disrespectful to the sectors involved that it went on public exhibition in the form that it did, and that ratepayers' money has been squandered and critical time has been lost. Our community truly deserves better than this. With the urgent need for leadership, vision and a competent plan to enable growth post-drought, bushfires and COVID, many would have expected at least a standard level of economic development, strategic thinking and planning with tangible targets and actions, key performance indicators, and a time frame to deliver any outcomes, which are all basic elements and standard inclusions in any plan or strategy for that matter. If I may point out, our neighbouring Shire strategic documents all contain these basic elements. Instead, we have a document devoid of detail and full of generalisations and motherhood statements that no one can be held to account to deliver. It was never disclosed to industry representatives up front that this would be another strategy, and at some time in the future, there would be a document produced with actionable items, actual targets and measures of success. This document was always pitched as a whole of destination plan combining economic development and tourism, hence its original title, the Southern Highlands Destination Management Plan. Another myth being proffered was that this plan was always intended to be a strategy and not contain actions, despite its original title. So it's now being renamed a strategy. Lines like that may be humorous in episodes of comedies like Yes Minister and Utopia, but they are absolutely tragic when it comes to ratepayers' money and community futures are on the line after one of the toughest years for the region and staring at one of the biggest economic crises the world has seen in most people's living memory. At all stages, industry have followed the specified engagement process set out by Council for the draft plan. But in all honesty, the general feeling within many industry sectors was that it lacked genuine stakeholder collaboration and was more of a tick-the-box process. Initial industry engagement was limited to invited representatives for a single 2-hour meeting. There was no pre-meeting readings or preparatory information provided to participants, making it difficult to provide considered feedback or input during this single engagement session. After a written submission to the draft, there has been no official written reply to the identified queries and questions. The first hint of official answers, such as they are, was only in the council papers for today's meeting published late last week. For the sake of the sectors involved, I'm sorry to say, if it looks like a turkey, walks like a turkey, and smells like a turkey, it's probably a turkey, no matter which way you dress it up. The only way I can see the whole community and relevant sectors can salvage any value from this document and maintain the region's reputation and credibility is to rename this document a discussion paper and re-engage in genuine community and industry collaboration going forward. So we can all develop a plan or strategy that has a chance to drive meaningful, sustainable growth and provide a roadmap for the tourism and economic development of the region. which should also contain key milestones of progress and success and a timeline with actionable items. So I urge all councillors today, please consider their position as our community elected representatives, and in the name of good governance, reject the proposal to accept this substandard document, and further, to seek genuine input and collaboration between leveraging industry and community knowledge and experience.
Thank you. So your time has expired, Mr. Bourne, and as councillors and those watching are aware, with public forum, there are no questions from councillors or comment. I'll go to Mr. Aaron Neil Stevens, who will address council in support of the recommendation. Are you there, Mr. Neil Stevens?
He's connecting, Mr. Mayor.
He is connecting.
So which recommendation? He's not dealing with the strategy plan. He's dealing with Broomfield subdivision.
Sorry, you're right, Councillor. You're right, Councillor Turlock. With the stormwater drainage of Bloomfield Road subdivision, Mr. Aaron Stevens, you have the floor.
I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to speak to council today on this matter. On the 24th of June 2020, a notice of motion was put forward on the issues within Bloomfield Close during the ordinary meeting of council. A resolution was passed that an information session be held with councillors. The residents still await the outcome. Following this, on the 27th of August, the acting general manager visited on site. He communicated to residents both verbally and in writing that an independent report would be conducted to gain advice as to what action council should take. After continual requests for the results over the following weeks, months, still nothing. The question is asked how, with so much evidence provided to council on the issues, with communication documented and dating back as far as 2017, council can still not answer our questions on the serious breaches of council guidelines within this development. It could be suggested that council are not taking these issues seriously with recent evidence that the left hand is not speaking to the right. On the 22nd of September 2020, after the acting general manager visited on site and spoke to the residents, a section 68 following the guidelines set out in the 88B was approved to allow stormwater to discharge and drain onto a neighbouring property within Mansfield Road, where there is no legal access to stormwater easements or council-owned infrastructure. The questions are asked why there is no infrastructure, easements or legal points of drainage in place to carry the stormwater which currently runs off lots 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, almost 50% of the development. Point 2, how does the design of the right of carriageway approved by council achieve the requirements and guidelines highlighted in the following extractions I will read out from development application number 150007 for lots 6 and 7 upstream properties? Point 3, as requested by a number of concerned residents, council needs to provide evidence that the imported soil on lot 4, number 7, has the correct approvals, paperwork for carriage, and all tests were done to ensure it is not contaminated nor has come from a contaminated area. Council also has to show that measures are being done to effectively comply with the EPA in stopping the erosion from this soil, which was dumped over the easements to council's benefit, running through lots 4, 3, 2, and 1. I take some extractions from the development application number 150007, section 25, provision of services. The provision of stormwater drainage connection to each allotment within the subdivision prior to the release of the subdivision certificate. You will note supply to each allotment prior to the release of subdivision certificate. I ask for council's explanation as to how the subdivision certificate was released when there is this clear breach of terms set out by council itself. Section 50, provision of works and services, stormwater drainage. Provision of adequate stormwater drainage infrastructure for the conveyance of stormwater passing through the site from upstream to a discharge outlet. The point of discharge is to be clearly depicted and the legal right to discharge at that point to be justified. Again, it is asked for council to explain as to how did the subdivision certificate get released in relation to the approved DA number 150007 in this clear breach of terms when lots 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, all upstream, have not been supplied with provisions of adequate stormwater drainage infrastructure. Further on in section 50, stormwater drainage, provision of adequate stormwater drainage infrastructure for the conveyance of stormwater passing through the site from upstream to a discharge outlet. Drainage easements shall be created for all stormwater overland flow paths generated and upstream properties. The point of discharge is to be clearly depicted and the legal right to discharge at that point to be justified. Status of the point of discharge is to be made clear, i.e. provision of drainage easements. Again, there is here a need to ask for council's explanation as to how then did the subdivision certificate get released in this clear breach of terms when lots 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 have not been supplied with any of the above. There is a diagram that I have that shows the easement and the documents, but I am unsure if I can share my screen at this time. It is not allowing me to. That document was forwarded on earlier on. I'm unsure if the councillors have that at hand.
I'm not sure either in relation to that. But continue on so your time doesn't expire.
20 seconds.
So I have photographs here that provide evidence in regards to the right of carriageway. I have videos and can provide these to the councillors that show that clearly the water does not flow where it is directed. The right of carriageway does not have an easement for stormwater and flows back down into the properties lots 7 and 8 and 9, and then down on into Mansfield Road, which then carries on further down into the New South Wales water catchment area. I also have...
Mr. Neil Stevens, your time has expired, but with no questions can be asked, but just to let you know, there is an inspection to be undertaken by councils of Bloomfield Roads at the development. So
Can we ask for that to be? It's not a question. It's a question to you, Mr. Mayor. Can we have that submission sent to us all, please?
Oh, I can. You haven't let me finish. Please let me finish without interrupting.
I wasn't interrupting.
I was still speaking, Councillor Turley. And if you wish to forward that those diagrams onto councillors, onto council, I'll make sure they're distributed to all councillors. Okay, thank you, Mr. Neil Stevens. We'll now move on to item 9.1, presentation of the audited annual financial statements from the period ended 30th of June 2020. And Mr. Michael Kazoo from the New South Wales Audit Office will present the audited financial statements to council, and he is on Zoom. And you will, good afternoon, Mr. Kazoo.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Your time starts, and you don't have any basic time for audited documents of council, and you will be happy to take questions in relation to the audited figures, Mr. Kazoo?
Yes, sure, that's fine.
Okay. Sorry.
Councillor Scanner's got his card.
Question in relation to what Councillor Scanner? Excuse me, Mr. Kazoo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just checking that is Mr. Reynolds observing the meeting today? You didn't introduce him.
No, I didn't, because I am unaware, but yes, he is online.
He's not in the room.
But he's not in the room, he is online. Over to you, Mr. Kazoo.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. So most of you, I probably have met most of you. This is my first year auditing Wingery-Carriby Shire Council. I'm a director at the New South Wales Audit Office, and I've also got online Suzanne Tedger, who's the audit leader. She manages the audit process. So first of all, I'd just like to acknowledge that there was, it was quite a difficult year this year. There was a lot of circumstances. Obviously, COVID was one of them, where it made life a little bit more challenging from both sides. I think we're working remotely, so there was a bit of a challenge there, but I think we worked through that well. On top of that, there was the new accounting standard this year, which was a big piece of work for council. There was the infrastructure valuations, and on top of all that, as I mentioned, there's a new director and manager who have different styles. So there were a lot of challenges this year, but I think things obviously worked out quite well, and we worked very well with finance and management. As you can probably see, I'm not sure if you have it up on the screen, but the main thing I'll be looking at today is a report on the conduct of the audit. And what this basically has is it just gives you a high-level summary of the audit outcome, and then we also do have some analysis on council's finances and also on some of the key ratios. So first of all, you know, I'm pleased to say that we've issued a clean audit opinion this year, which means we believe that there's that the financial statements are materially stated, and also that there were no significant matters that required reporting here. So that's always pleasing to see. In terms of the income statement, I'll just touch on these just on highlights, and then happy to take questions after. So in terms of the income statement, the key thing to note is that there was a large decrease in grants and contributions, and this is mainly due to a decrease in the dedications from subdivisions. And this is also the main driver for the 24% decrease in council's operating result for this year. In terms of the cash side of things, once again, I won't spend much time on this, but just to point out that council's cash positions increased this year from $5 million to $8 million. And cash aggregated with investments has also had a decent increase, I think by about $12 million. And most of these cash and investments, most of that increase is gone to externally restricted funds, which means they have externally imposed restrictions on the way they can be spent. So turning to the ratios, so just to point out, these ratios are only the ratios that we've audited, and they're included in your general purpose financial statements. And overall, council exceeded all of the Office of Local Government's benchmarks. Looking at the first ratio, the operating performance ratio. So this basically measures how well council containing spending within the money that's coming in. Council's ratio of 7% exceeds OLG's benchmark of 0%. So what that means is council are not spending beyond their means, I guess, or not spending more than what's coming in. The next ratio is your own source operating revenue ratio. So this ratio measures the degree to which council relies on external funding. OLG's benchmark is 60%, so that means the benchmark is 60% of the revenue coming in has been internally generated. And council's current ratio is 73%, which obviously exceeds that benchmark. And this has increased from the previous years, and that's due to the decrease in the grants and contributions. So the lower your grants and contributions, this ratio will increase because that'll show that you're sourcing more of your own income. The next ratio is the unrestricted current ratio. So this just measures how council's ability to meet short-term obligations. Council's ratio easily exceeded the OLG benchmark. I think the OLG benchmark was 1.5, and council's current ratio is at 5.7. The next one's a debt service cover ratio. So this measures council's ability to service their debt. And once again, council have easily exceeded the OLG benchmark. So council's ratio is 7.2 times, and that's above OLG's benchmark of at least 2 times. The next ratio is the rates and annual charges outstanding ratio. So this looks at council's ability to recover the money owed to them. OLG's benchmark is to have that outstanding, rates outstanding, the outstanding percentage to be below 10%. And council currently are at 4.2% for 2019-20. So this indicates that the debt recovery strategies are currently being currently effective. The next ratio is a cash expense cover ratio. So this indicates the number of months council could theoretically continue meeting their expenses or commitments without money coming in. The benchmark set by OLG is greater than 3 months, and council's ratio is 24 months. So theoretically, council could continue meeting commitments for 2 years without money coming in. Obviously, that's just, you know, it is theoretical. It's just based on a ratio at a point in time. So they're the ratios, as you can see, as I mentioned. So council have exceeded all the Office of Local Government's benchmarks, which is pleasing. The next point in the report is asset renewals. We know this is always an important area for all councils, so we just we put in just a paragraph there just to point out that council have increased their spending on asset renewals from 16 million last year to 26 million in the current year. And also, so the new accounting standards is a point there. I won't go into too much detail with that, but just to say that it was a large piece of work for all councils, and we acknowledge that there's a lot of work that got done by council to get their financial statements complying with the accounting standards. And you know, overall, I think for Windsor Carriby Shire Council, the impact was immaterial, but we're comfortable with the way that they were applied into the financial statements and also the way that they were disclosed. And also just to point out that there was no, we also, if issues of non-compliance do come to our attention, that we mention it, and from the work we have performed, there's been no issues regarding non-compliance. Finally, I'd just like to thank Richard, Damien and the team for their cooperation, professionalism and transparency. They really made the process a lot easier, and they really worked well with our team, and that made life a lot easier from both sides. So thank you to them. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gazoo. It is very pleasing to note that you are happy with the financial statements of WSC. There are many councils, or there are some who have been very much in the public spotlight because of fiscal mismanagement, and it's pleasing to hear you give council I would believe, a gold star on this occasion, as we've been fortunate enough through the hard work and diligence of staff to receive them previously. Councillor Turland has a question.
Good afternoon. Look, the question I have, or a couple of questions, is the first one is the debt ratio, 7.2, that's current council's debt ratio, but the OLG is 2.2. Does this mean that we could borrow more money to get through facilities that we need to upgrade?
Yeah, so you're right in that the council's ratio is 7.2, and the ratio set by OLG, the benchmark is 2. You know, 2 is it's a very generalised benchmark, as you can imagine. It's set over a whole lot of councils, and each council has a different appetite for bringing in debt, as you know, as we all are as individuals. So it depends on your appetite for bringing in debt and how comfortable you are doing it. But what it does show is that, in comparison to what OLGs would say it is, that there is some room. There is some room if needed.
So quite a bit of room, I would think. That's what you're sort of trying to indicate, from 7 to 2. 2 times 2 and 7 times 2.
Yeah, that's right. That's not our benchmark, that's OLG's benchmark. But if you look at their benchmark, then yes, that would indicate that.
Do you think $190 million is excess in bank accounts at the moment for our size council?
I think, Mr. Kazoo, you no need to answer that question, as a lot of those, as you're aware, a lot of those monies are restricted assets for future projects. But you can answer if you wish, but not obliged to.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was going to point to, is the fact that if you look at the financial position, it's the same. I look at about 14 different councils that I have that I'm looking at, and you know, a common thing that I see is, yeah, there might be a lot of cash, but a lot of it's tied up in restrictions and things that you can't really use for whatever your purposes are. They're externally imposed. So
through you, Mr. Kazoo, I may just provide you with some assistance there. Councillors, if I can draw your attention to page 33 of the General Purpose Financial Reports, note 7C, That provides an outline of council's cash and investments. And you can clearly see from that disclosure that $142 million of our total cash and investments is externally restricted for purposes which are either prescribed under legislation, whether that be Section 7.11 contributions or Section 64 contributions, or in the case of managing appropriately our fund accounting for water and sewer fund. And councillors, as you'd be aware through our discussions as part of our budgeting and our long-term financial planning, it would be inappropriate and in fact contravenes legislation for us to exercise any discretion around water and sewer funds, which wasn't specifically for water and sewer. So Mr. Kazu, I trust that assists with your explanation there.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, and just on that, it appears that restricted assets of the Central Coast Council have been have been pillaged, and there is going to be a huge outfall for council up there taking restricted assets monies. Any other councillor got a question? Councillor McLaughlin, then Councillor Whipper, then Councillor Halstead.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. With regard to, and it's good to hear we got a clean bill of health, but in your experience with regard to 14 or 15 other local government audits that you've done, I'm just wondering, do you see any areas of concern for Wingecarribee at the moment? And how do we stack up compared to other regional councils around our size?
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Mr. Kazoo.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Councillor. It's a common question that I get quite a bit when I attend these council meetings, and it's a valid question. Look, overall, I mean, you have exceeded the benchmark on all ratios, which it's as good as you can get according to the benchmark set by Office of Local Government. I've noticed that while a lot of the debt type of ratios that most councils, I've noticed from my experience, do have this, that they've got high ratios as well around that. So it probably indicates that councils aren't taking on large amounts of debt. But there are some councils that have struggled to meet the ratio around containing their spending within the revenue coming in. So that's one area that I've noticed. Another one is being able to show that they can generate enough revenue, so above that 60% benchmark that OLG have. They're two that I've noticed that sometimes come up as an issue. Another one, because of COVID, has been around the outstanding rates and annual charges. That's another one that sort of could have spiked up. But I mean, from Wingecarribee Shire Council's point of view, I think that it's been able to contain all the ratios and meeting them all. So it seems like a good result.
Thank you. And then it was Councillor Whipper, then Councillor Halstead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, Mr. Kazu. This question might be left of field, I'm not sure. Firstly, congratulations and thank you for the report and a job well done by our staff, I know. But my question relates to a question from community around our environment levy. There was some discrepancies between what the community envisaged as a 3.5% permanent levy versus our 2.9, I think it is, in the report this year. I'm just wondering if you had an opportunity to see the information that I forwarded through our mayor and our CFO on that matter.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. Mr. Kazoo, then after you've answered that, Councillors Scandrett and Nelson after Councillor Halstead. Mr. Kazoo.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so from the audit perspective, like we're giving opinions on the general purpose financial statements, the special purpose financial statements, and the special schedule on permissible income. I mean, from that, and that's our that's our scope of where we're sort of looking at, and from what we've seen, we're comfortable that all three of them are materially stated correctly. I am aware of this what you're mentioning here, and I have discussed it with finance and they've taken me through it. But I mean, from our point of view, it's probably a little bit out of our scope to be looking at that. So it's probably more of an appropriate question for management. Probably better to answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Halstead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Kazu, with your extensive experience over a long period of time in that audit office or prior to that, I would imagine the following question wouldn't be too hard to answer, albeit the Mayor might not think that should happen. But I'm very concerned to know how rate income stacks up against wages, the total wages bill, how that is relative, because that's pretty important, I think, to me as a councillor.
Yeah, fair question. Mr. Kazoo.
So, Councillor, just to clarify the question, so you're asking around the increase in rates relative to increase in salaries, average salaries in the community. Is that what you're asking?
Councillor Halstead.
No, I'm not. I'm asking how viable are we as a council? Sorry, how viable we are as a council if we look at the total bill for rates, income for rates versus the total bill for wages. I imagine you might.
Hang on, Councillor Halstead. Something happened on the transmission there and we sort of lost you. Can you repeat the question?
Thanks. Yeah, look, it's one I've asked a few times before, I'm sure you've heard. I'm wanting to know how the council stacks up when it looks at its rate income total versus its expenditure on wages total.
Okay, got you now. Mr. Kazoo.
Okay, so, well, I mean, from the, probably the most relevant ratio, probably doesn't perfectly answer the question, but from a high level, we can see that council are generating enough. They're keeping the expenses within their means. If you look at the operating performance ratio, it shows that you're not spending more money than you're earning. But if you're looking specifically at wages and how you're spending wages, it's something that I haven't actually looked at across and done an analysis on comparing wages across different councils and comparing that to the income coming in. That's what you're asking.
I understand that, but of course, that income in terms of what you're talking about could involve grants and all that sort of thing to offset it. So I accept your answer in terms of being part answer.
Yeah, but one thing to point out also is that operating performance ratio does exclude capital grants and contributions as well. But yeah, you're right, it does include operating grants and contributions, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Councillor Scandra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Kazoo, capital grants, we received a capital grant of 4.6 million for the Berrima Road deviation some 18 months ago, but unfortunately that grant was rescinded. Could you just take me through how that's been treated in the books, because it was taken up as income, and then we received a part of it in the end, about 1.2 million.
Mr. Kazoo.
Yeah, so I'm not across that level of details on that specific grant. So it's probably more of a question probably for management.
Yes, I'll pass that across to Mr. Mooney.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Scandra. And yes, Mr. Kazoo, happy to provide further detail on that. In the statements that were prepared for the 2018-19 financial year, Council had disclosed a contingent liability with respect to the potential that we were going to be required to repay a portion of that grant. During the 2019-20 financial year, we were able to successfully put forward a case that allowed Council to retain the grant funding that it had effectively received over a period of 2 to 3 years. As such, it was removed from our contingent liabilities for the period ending 30 June 2020. Trust that answers your question, Councillor Scandra.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, not so much a question, but pointing out on page 19, other revenues, revenue from continuing operations, shows the decrease from 2019 to 2020 in parking fines, legal fees recovery, sales general, hall and room rental, lease rental, other wages income, all decreasing due to council's actions in COVID-19. That's where that's indicated. Probably just confirm that.
Looking for a confirmation on to the comments from Councillor Nelson, Mr. Kazoo.
Okay, yeah, well, I haven't got the financial statements from me, so I've got my screen.
All right.
Through you, Mr. Kazoo, I can answer that question on your behalf if that's appropriate. Yeah, yes, Councillor, you're correct. Page 19 does outline the fees that council does generate through legal fee recovery. Through the actions that this council approved on the 1st of April in relation to its COVID-19 pandemic relief and funding package, council took the steps of suspending any debt recovery action, and that's why you've seen a decrease in the third line item there on page 19, which obviously is something that has been well received within the broader community as we continue to manage our way out of the current pandemic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor McLaughlin, last question.
Councillor Tootle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't really have one, but I was just wondering if our CFO can tell us if this is the last reimbursement we'll get from the CDOs from Lehman Brothers. I see here on page 19 that we're still getting quite a bit of money coming in from our CDOs.
Well, that's probably a rhetorical comment, but do you have one, Mr. Kazoo? And then Councillor Tootle.
I think it's probably more a question to management.
It is, yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kazoo. Well done.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councillor, that is at a stage now, as you would be aware, Mr. Paul has been on the public record regarding our success with the recovery of the CDOs over the past 2 to 3 years. That is essentially the remains of what is coming through, and I can't offer any comment regarding any future claims that may still be pending.
Thank you. Councillor Tootle, and last one.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kazoo. Look, the question I'm going to ask is that with the interest rates so cheap at the moment through the world, but not just in Australia at the moment, and even just gone down again on Melbourne Cup Day, I think it was. Do you think it's prudent that council could borrow more money to do other projects or bring them online earlier than later?
Mr. Kazoo, that is I think not in your realm, but it's been asked. But again, I think that's a question for council orders as opposed to our auditor. Mr. Kazoo.
Yeah, that's right. It is the magic question. It's the magic question that everyone's asking, whether they should take on more debt with these, almost free money coming in. And
thank you.
But it doesn't mean that that's necessarily what you should be doing under different circumstances. So once again, as I mentioned earlier, I think it was a similar question earlier, and it really does depend on the needs of council and your risk appetite for taking on more debt.
Okay, I think we will leave it there. So thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Whipper.
Look, I didn't want to be impolite before, but Mr. Kazoo did suggest that it may be appropriate for staff to comment on the 3.5 versus 2.9%, because again, it's just for accountability and for transparency in community. So maybe the staff would like to make a comment before we put this to the vote, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, look, I'll do that, but I know we're going to have a briefing session to try and fully explain the rationale of the differential of the 2.9 to the 3 point whatever it is. So I'll ask Mr. Paul to make comment, and then we'll go from there.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor. The Mayor is correct. I'm intending to organise an information session with the councillors prior to the next council meeting. it'll give the staff the opportunity to walk the councillors through very carefully what has actually transpired over the last, effectively it's been the last 18 years that we've had a number of special rate variations, and you need to take it in the context of all of those special rate variations. I'm also going to invite the Manager of Environment and Sustainability to come along as well, because he has a very clear and, I guess, position in terms of it as well, and he's got a very direct interest in the environment levy and how it's actually played out. So I'd like the opportunity to do that, Councillor Whipper, and I guess my hope is that I can satisfy the elected councillors that everything is above board, and then I'm quite happy then to talk about how we can communicate that to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Thanks for the update. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Whipper, and to you, Mr. Kazoo, thank you for your first address to this council, and your first address hopefully will be repeated here for many years to come. But in just closing, as Councillor Glockler first pointed out, we've met all benchmarks, we've exceeded all benchmarks as a council, and to my belief that is through prudent financial management, which I think this council will continue to do, and also through the dedication and the commitment of a very, very competent financial team through Mr. Mooney. So thank you very much. We'll now put you offline and we will continue on with council business. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Nice meeting you all.
Thank you.
Okay, we now go to item 9.2, Southern Highlands. Oh, we have to put the recommendation on what page? It's on page 2. Moved by Councillor Turlin, seconded Councillor McLaughlin. Any discussion? Put it. All in favour? Against? Carried. Well, we didn't have to put it then, but we did. We now move to 9.2. Ms. Megan Monte will address council in support of the recommendation in relation to the Southern Highlands Regional Gallery business plan. So if you're there, Ms. Monte. Yes.
Are you looking for somebody to move the motion, Mr. Mayor, at this stage?
I take your point very well picked up, Councillor Whipper.
Thank you.
So you will move it, Councillor Turlin is seconding.
Thank you.
So, over to you, Ms. Monte, to address council in relation to the business plan.
I'd like to start by acknowledging the Gundungurra people, the traditional custodians of this land. My name is Megan Monty and I'm the Director of Ngunnawal. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Council for inviting me here today to present our strategic business plan. Our vision is to serve as the centre of arts and culture in the Southern Highlands. Our mission speaks to who we are and where we are placed in our community. It outlines our focus areas in arts and culture and our ability to remain agile and responsive given our unique funding and partnership model. We maintain an approach that is inclusive, sustainable, and future focused to ensure relevance to residents and schools in the region. Our strategic priority areas are art and ideas, education, audiences, and governance and partnerships. Our KPIs provide further detail of activity, measure, and time frame in order to achieve our goals. Our areas of creative focus include visual arts and education. We are guided by our values to ensure our program offers an art experience for all. True to the meaning of our name, which is belonging, we place an emphasis on inclusion and providing a genuine engagement opportunity. Our program will include interactive projects for children and young people, professional development opportunities for aspiring artists, school programs, masterclasses, and various social events. We set our sights on creating fun and varied art experiences for everyone. I believe our plan is ambitious, and this is a continuation of the ambition forged by everyone involved. This includes the community who have expressed their desire to have a regional gallery of their own for some time. It is also scalable. and using a dynamic, it places us in a dynamic position to be adaptive in our environment. This is a huge milestone for us, developing our strategic plan and presenting it to you at Council. And we're excited to share our vision with you and look forward to cementing our partnership to set the foundation for our regional gallery. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, you're willing to take questions?
Yes, I am.
And welcome to your first official address to Windsor Carriby Shire. So well done. We'll be up there, hopefully not too far away, to throw a bit of dirt into a heap to turn the first on. But Councillor McLaughlin has a question.
Of course.
Can't hear you.
You're on mute, Councillor.
Oh, sorry. Good afternoon. I thought I turned it on. Good afternoon and congratulations. Yes, look, some of the regional galleries that I've gone to, I'm just concerned about most of them. I find they're available to the community without a charge for the general run of things. Will that be the case with regard to this facility?
Yes, that is our intention, to have a free and available public art gallery open 7 days a week. We have made a note in our strategic plan that we may, in special circumstances, special exhibitions, that we may place an administration fee on entrance, but we collectively feel, myself and our board, that we do want to keep it free for young people and children. But this will be something that we discuss, and it will be, as I said, very special exhibitions that we may do this, and it will be a conversation as we grow and evolve.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Turland.
Good afternoon. The question I've got is that the artwork that's there, if it's for sale, does the committee or the board actually take a commission on the sale of any items?
We will be operating as a public gallery. We won't operate in a commercial capacity. So at any time, we won't actually be selling artworks in our gallery. If at any time there is interest in purchasing any of the works, we would forward those interests onto the artists or their representing galleries.
Okay, I was just looking for a second income for you, that's all.
You'll get so many people you won't need to, hopefully. Any other questions? Or Councillor Whipper and then Councillor Scanlon.
G'day, Megan. Yeah, the business plan reads really well. And we all know that to survive, there needs to be income. So those special exhibitions obviously will have an entry price connected with it. But one of the things I'm really impressed by in terms of measurables are the social and cultural inclusion. So can you maybe just talk a little bit about how you're going to achieve that?
Thank you.
Yes, it is. Councillor Whipper, are you just referring to our program?
Well, the facility itself, because there's so much more than the programs to this facility, and in terms of inclusion, that inclusiveness. So maybe just a sketch of how that might be achieved.
Yeah, so I think like looking at our program, that is obviously one really key and vital part of what we do, but as is education. And that will be a very, very strong focus. Actually, just as equally as strong as our visual art focus, we have a dedicated education space, and we will have a dedicated education staff member and comprehensive strategy that allows us to remain and be relevant to schools locally and further afield in New South Wales. And we're in the process now actually of going through a series of teachers sessions and building that connection, building that network. So we're sort of always constantly going to be evolving to their needs and wants as students and as teachers as well.
And you were also talking about inclusion with our Aboriginal community as well?
Yes, so we have an Aboriginal name, as I mentioned. Nunangola means belonging, and we are very honoured and proud to be working closely with our Aboriginal community. And not only will we be working with them to create programs in our visual art exhibition program and events, we'll also work closely with them to create an education program, a bespoke program that will be led and run by the Aboriginal community, and it will be guided and dictated by what they're wanting to put out in terms of cultural education.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, Ms. Monty. A few questions. I'll just take you through them. And I'll note you say that it's scalable. Now, does that include the dedicated education staffer?
We have, in the current plan, in our first 3 years, we have them working at a part-time capacity. And at that part-time capacity is being conservative in our budgets, and we'll expand that position to full-time if we're able to financially afford that position to be increased to a full-time capacity. And at that time, we will also bring on a production manager. Again, if we're able to afford it and we're able to financially achieve that.
In your sensitivity analysis, when a 10% decrease in revenue or increase in costs, effectively the same thing, takes place, do either of those positions get altered?
We will always remain to have our small core staff, which is myself as an assistant director, a communications manager, and our education officer part-time. We'll only scale and increase if we're able to, moving forward into the 2 new positions. I do feel confident that we can keep and hold the positions that we have put forward in our first 3 years.
I'll look forward to more information on that. Does the cafe have a sales target based on the
Mr. Mayor,
$20,000?
could I just, a point of order, how many questions are we entitled to?
Councillor Scandrett, you push the boundaries every time. You get one question, otherwise we're going to be here all day. So thank you very much, Ms. Monte. May your position at the gallery be very successful for you, and we look forward to working with you over the ensuing years. So well done, and thank you for your address.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I now put the recommendation as moved by Councillor Ripper and who was seconded? Councillor Turlin. Put it, all in favour? Carried unanimously. Yes. Thank you. We now move on to 11.1.
Mr. Mayor, we have a debate on that, and you've just moved straight past it.
Well, if you wish to debate it, then I will resubmit it, but I didn't think there would be a
No,
debate.
you've already put it.
You didn't ask.
I am asking, then I will ask whether council wish for it to be resubmitted.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Yes,
Can
I think
have
that
those who wish for it to be resubmitted, please raise their card. Okay, then somebody move that it be resubmitted.
So moved.
Moved, Councillor Scandrett. Seconded.
Councillor Nelson.
Second, Councillor Nelson. Put it, all in favour.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, open for debate. Or do you want an introduction from council staff, which would be more appropriate prior to the debate?
Mr. Mayor, I believe Mr. Mooney met with a representation from the group, so maybe that would be a good introduction point to him.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'd like Mr. Petting, if I may, to give a very brief introduction, and then he can hand over to Mr. Mooney about Mr. Mooney's due diligence that he's done on the financial aspects of the plan, and I think that probably will answer the council's questions.
Okay.
So we'll go in that order. Mr. Pepping and then Mr. And please mute yourself, councillors. That's better.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, very briefly, this report pretty much speaks for itself, and Ms. Monty gave a very good summary of the operation of it, and we're not here to delve over the actual business strategy of the gallery. It's more about reporting back to council on the resolution that was passed back on the 19th of September 2018 when council made a commitment to fund $500,000 per annum as a contribution on behalf of Windsor Carriby Shire Council for a period of 5 years. And there are a number of conditions that were part of that resolution to, I guess, reaffirm council's position before that money would be released. And so specifically, the business plan goes into those matters that were listed in 2B and 2C of that plan. As has been discussed, Mr. Mooney and myself met with Ms. Monty and Mr. Ferguson earlier or late last week on this particular matter. And Mr. Mooney was able to comment on some of the financial reporting within their business plan, and I'll hand it over to Mr. Mooney now.
Thank you, Mr. Paul, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Correct, councillors, the specific matters that we're dealing with today, as Mr. Pepping has outlined, is Resolution 2C, which dealt specifically with the business case. The meeting that both Mr. Pepping and I had with Mr. Monty and Mr. Ferguson was a very productive meeting. It was a meeting that certainly afforded both Mr. Pepping and myself to gain a great deal of confidence in terms of the risk mitigation strategies that the board and Ms. Monty have introduced into their budget forecast. Councillors, as is the case with any venture, new venture, it really is an exercise around risk mitigation when it comes to establishing forward estimates. The most encouraging aspects of the board's endorsed budget and Ms. Monty's work is that, and Ms. Monty touched on this point, is the scalability, is the ability for the new venture to essentially respond accordingly to opportunities, whether they come through grant funding or through generous donations through members of the public. In addition to talking about the scalability, it provided us with an opportunity to have a conversation with Ms. Monty and Mr. Ferguson around the fixed costs and the fixed overheads that come along with having a community facility. Obviously, this is something that we're experienced with here at council, and I'm happy to say that every question that was asked of in terms of their thoughts and their process behind how they had established those budgets were on point with our own considerations. So, councillors, from that perspective, I'm satisfied, and Mr. Pepping are both satisfied that those particular clauses of the council resolution are met through the document that you have in front of you today.
Thank you. And remembering it's not our financial, our financials, it's the regional galleries on private land. Councillor Turlin and Councillor McLaughlin.
Mr. Pepping, how are we going with the rezoning of the road going through? And did we waiver the section 64s and 94s in the DA process for the non-for-profit?
Through the chair, the reclassification of the land to accommodate the proposed access road was signed off by the minister a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was actually last Friday or the Friday before, I just can't remember now. Last Friday it was published in the Government Gazette. So the DA relating to the road, and then also the road DA needs to be approved in order to activate the development consent for the gallery itself. So they're in the process of being finalised. In terms of the section, there was no section 94 contributions attributed to the gallery because it's a facility that doesn't attract that. I just don't recall myself any contributions in relation to the section 64. I'd have to check that. I don't have that on me.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we're in the Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you.
We've asked a question. We will go into debate after the Councillor McLaughlin's question.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With regard to the synergy between the National Trust on Mr. Fairfax's estate was wondering if there's an MOU that has been considered, or do we know about, between the gallery, because I think that could work quite positively between those two operations.
Okay,
Joy.
thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Mr. Pepping.
Look, thank you, Councillor. Through the Mayor, there's a 25-year lease that has been granted by the National Trust to the Gallery Board, or the organisation to run the gallery. In terms of agreements and arrangements between the gallery and the trust, that's really not of any business of council, because we're not a party to the lease, and we're not any way in ownership of the land. So, look, I'm sure as things evolve, there will be greater use by both parties, but that's not something that we would be part of.
Thank you. I just think it leads to viability of both, but thank you for that. Thank you.
Okay. Now, there was a recommendation moved by Councillor
Scandrett requesting a question.
Question. Councillor Scandrett, this is your second. You are overlapping every other councillor with your number of questions. And it is not...
It's not my second.
It's not his second
Mr.
question.
Mayor,
It was.
it's not my second question.
It was to
And
Monty.
you're ignoring me.
There's a question to Miss Monty. Councillor Scandrett.
Go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I ask about the cafe lease, Mr. Mooney? What expectations have you been given in terms of its potential income and its ability to survive quiet trade? And the other is, how are the wages being paid of Miss Monty and the other lady at this point in time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mooney.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That would be a completely inappropriate question for me to ask of the board of the gallery. That is a commercial arrangement that they have entered into. And it's as simple as that, Councillor. It would be inappropriate for me to comment.
And the question about the salaries, Mr. Mooney? Are we remitting those at the moment?
No. Council hasn't given any contributions to the gallery at this point in time until this business strategy was completed.
And just to confirm, through you, Mr. Mayor, as the Mayor has quite rightly pointed out, this is the venture of the board. They will not be council employees. The transaction that will take place between council and the art gallery is a very simple transaction of a $500,000 contribution over for 5 continuing years. Simple as that.
And
I get that. It's an admirable venture, Mr. Mooney, but I don't want to be part of propping it up in the 5 years if there are concerns.
Now that's commentary.
You are entering into debate, and it is a statement you're making. And I do reiterate, this is private land with council making a contribution towards the administration costs. And for councillors to try to get themselves involved in it as a commercial venture or question the board or whatever, then take it to the board. Do not bring it to council.
Well, I did try.
Is there any other debating point? Councillor Whipper, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is an exciting project. Council have invested into it. And as Mr. Pepping and Mr. Mooney have said, there hasn't been any release of any of that money pending this business plan that we have before us tonight. I'm quite confident that it's a high caliber business plan. The people we're talking about, I don't know what these fears about the gallery making money. I mean, they've already raised well over $3 million through contributions and through the interest of the community. I have no doubt that this will be self-sufficient in a very short time. And with Moonacres coming on, I think, you know, just the status of Moonacres as a cafe as well will draw people in itself without the artistic contribution that the gallery is making. So very professional people. If you look at Megan Monty's resume, yeah, very, very capable people, and also Milena as well. They're highly qualified, and Megan has worked at Campbelltown Gallery and had her own art gallery. I think it was called Cement Fondue. Very successful. So in a lot of ways, we're very, very fortunate to have that caliber of people, and including, you know, Mr. Ferguson on the board, and obviously Ben Quilty, you know, sort of putting his energy into it as well. So there's no doubt in my mind that this is going to be a winner right across the Shire. Just a spin-off, you know, from this gallery is astronomical. You've heard how it's also inclusive of school groups, and there'll be free exhibitions and artworks as well, and working with Aboriginal community and the wider community of Wingecarribee Shire. So I think the fact that we as a council have put our faith and made that contribution in good faith speaks volumes. And I think we're part of a very exciting project that is going to, I think, just put this Shire well and truly on the map. So I'd be very disappointed if this didn't get a unanimous vote tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Are we in debate, Mr. Mayor?
You are in debate, and Councillor Nelson is the next to speak.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I support Councillor Whipper's comments. I did note that Councillor Scandrett has gone a little bit critical in the press about the business case for the art gallery. But I guess you have to ask yourself, do you want a regional art gallery or don't you? And the council has made that decision to move down that path and supported it with the 500,000 per year for 5 years. And that is the way to go, contrary to council's other decision where they were wanting to do a regional art gallery made up out of an existing bowling club at Mittagong, which I found myself being against. So although this is not a regional art gallery that is specifically designed to be one, which would be the best option, I think value for dollar, council expending $500,000 a year is getting value for money. And also, as Councillor Whipper suggested, the staff that have been employed are very experienced. So I look forward to them running a very successful regional art gallery. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think it's a great idea. I always have, but I've always expressed concerns about the financial operations, and I continue to do that. And I particularly have done that since we took the money from the operations of the RRC by deleting Sunday afternoons and 1 hour every weekday and taking jobs out there. That was a basic rate service to our municipality.
I will not allow false comments at a public meeting to be made. You have made a statement at the cost of jobs. I am going to ask council staff to interject and give you the proper version. Mr. Paul.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to be very clear, the full-time equivalent staffing of the RRC has not changed post that decision.
Right, so any comment to anybody out there watching, that has been a false statement given by Councillor Scandrett. Councillor Scandrett, you may resume.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for observing a meeting procedure and letting me speak. I noticed you let Councillor Whipper speak for 3 minutes when we weren't in debate. I still say that the RRC hours have been reduced.
Councillor Scandrett.
Clock.
Right, you are being timed. Councillor Whipper did not run out of time. He was within his time frame. It is being recorded by the timekeeper over there, Miss Lidgard, and you will hear the bell. And
Mr. Mayor, procedural point, you didn't announce we were in debate. You invited...
Mute him.
Mr. Mayor.
You do this.
He most certainly did.
You do this once more, Councillor Scandrett, and you will be expelled from the meeting through an act of disorder. You interject and take yourself on mute, you will be ejected. And I will tell you again, Councillor Whipper did not overrun his time. It was being recorded, as was the visitor items and public forum. The bell sounded. Now, as I say, one more interaction or you putting yourself on unmute when you've been muted, you will be ejected from the meeting. This is your last and final warning for every meeting. You do it again, no more questions, you're ejected. You may resume.
I'm glad Mr. Reynolds is watching this, Mr. Mayor, because it's meeting procedure. My question in this debate is about the viability of the investment that we're underwriting. Yes, it's a third-party one. We should be investing in things like this, but only if they're solid business case. And for example, if the viability of the cafe isn't there, you know, imagine on a weekday, there's 3 staff in the place and only 2 people drinking a cup of coffee. Now that's the realities of being in retail, which is what this is. This is a business venture. So I again ask for those, question those business plan, and the sensitivity analysis is quite damning. They have to reduce the jobs if there's any change in income or costs. Now, the outcome for the community is great. I continue to support the gallery, but not when there's a reduction of services, which is what I said before, Mr. Mayor. The opening hours of the RRC have been reduced on Sundays and weekdays by 1 hour. And that's a direct consequence of this. We've been putting money away for nearly a year and a half towards this, yet the business plan has only arrived today, 18 months late. It was due in March 2019. So again, I have grave concerns. Now, Ben Quilty's done a great job in raising very substantial money, $3.5 million from the community and another 2.4 and sundry others from grants. But I question whether, in fact, the gallery, if it can do that, can't continue to raise the operating expenditures that we're underwriting here. I don't believe that the business case that's been put forward is rigid. I think it's very, as Megan said, I think it's very flexible. That's fine, because they can take jobs in and take jobs out, reduce hours or increase hours of the education coordinator. But it's still not a viable demonstrated business. In the first 3 years of operation.
Your time has expired. Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hit the mute button to unmute myself and it took me somewhere else, so excuse that. Look, just on the comments by Councillor Scandrett, look, I go along with our Mr. Mooney. Mr. Mooney's had a look at this. He's looked at the business plan. We've been involved in this for a long time. Council have sat around the room and we've mulled over having, as Councillor Nelson said, having our own regional gallery. I think this is the best way forward. We can have our cake and eat it too. We're supporting them for 5 years only. And I think that by that time, even maybe before, especially with Moonacres coming on board. I don't know if Councillor Scandrett's ever been out there and tasted their food out there. That place is packed out solid. Now, there might only be 2 people in the cafe, but I would doubt that. Most weekdays, I would say, there will be buses. And as I talked about earlier, the synergy with the opening up of Redford Park, I think will add to the numbers that will support this. So I have no concerns that we are not doing the right thing. Sure enough, it's a lot of money, but how much money would it be for us to run our own gallery and employ our own staff and to do a building? I think we're getting out of this and the community are getting a great benefit. So I'm very much in support of this, and what Councillor Whipper's had to say and been involved in this a long time, with the people of the quality of Ben Quilty, I don't think we're really going to find ourselves going down the gurgler, or they find themselves going down the gurgler. In fact, I think it'll be a great boom in tourism and to this community, especially with the opening up of Redford Park and the house and the gardens. It's going to be another way, another reason that people come to the Southern Highlands, not just to see the Bradman or our beautiful surrounding, but to enjoy something that's really of great value. So I'll be supporting this. And it's disappointing we have a few naysayers that, you know, always on the fringe, having a bit of a shot. I think it's disappointing. As a council, we looked at this, we've weighed it up. Sure, it's a commitment, but we know the community is behind it. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
At any time that this community needs something to move forward with and to look forward to, this is the time in 2020. You know, this is a external, not really has any involvement with council, bar funding for 5 years to help it get off the ground for the community. It's a massive project that's going to be undertaken, but a project that's going to be fantastic and worthless for our community looking forward. The benefit to mental health when this starts to go will be unlimited for the school kids and the adults. Amazing that Ben Quilty and Councillor Whipper have pulled this together to where we are today. And thank the parties that have funded so much money to date to make this a realistic project. And they'll be listed, and I'm sure Ben and Larry, Councillor Whipper, will be advertising those people who have provided some funds to move forward for this project. This is an amazing opportunity we cannot lose. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll give you the right to reply, Councillor Whipper, but I just wanted, Councillor Turler made the comment. You know, the naysayers of Councillor McLaughlin, the naysayers, for goodness sake, we have been talking about this since I've virtually been on council. There have been committees set up throughout the community. There have been attempted to fundraise. But when you get a position of Redford Park that has gifted a piece of real estate that we are not going to have to maintain, look at the controversy over there at the Mittagong Lake Alexandra, where we designated an area for a regional gallery. We would have been still in the pipe dream reality, the pipe dream of that, if we had have continued on with that project. It was and is beyond our capability of building a regional gallery. I mean, $6.5 million or whatever they've got to spend on infrastructure that is already in place, meaning the building, and then not even having to purchase the land. It is going to be, in my opinion, probably one of the best funding agreements we could do in benefit of the community. So well done to the committee. Well done to Megan Monty for her presentation. And I just wish the committee all the very best and get the naysayers, go and build your own regional gallery somewhere and see how difficult it would be. Councillor Whipper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just looking at the motion, and with the indulgence of Councillor McLaughlin, I would just like to remind the minute taker that I did move that motion. So if that could be corrected, thank you. And yes, Mr. Mayor, I agree. I agree. You know, they're councillors who have 1 foot in each camp, and you know, I like it, but and I think it's just bad faith. All this council has done since we committed to this project is acted in good faith, and all the way through, what we've done is brought to life a 30-year dream, a vision of this community. We've assisted in that. If we had to lead this project, and if we took a lead and got made a commitment to build a gallery, we'd be talking at least another 30 plus years. Now, the good faith that's been awakened through this project comes from some incredibly talented people and master builders who I won't name, not to embarrass them, are doing pro bono work. The money that's being invested in this facility is astronomical. To sit there for any councillor or anybody in community to sit there and say, oh, I'm not sure whether this is going to survive or not, you know, they lack imagination. And, you know, and all I can say is that thank goodness one councillor on this council is not building a gallery, because I think we need imagination, we need creativity, we need commitment, and we need spirit, we need heart, and we need to get behind the vision of this community and make it and realise that vision. And I think we're going to do that tonight, councillors. I commit the business plan. It's a very valuable document, and it's not our business to get into the business of running that gallery. If we did, it would be a nightmare. So, councillors, I call on you, please support this project, continue to show good faith, and let's make this gallery the envy of other shires. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Whipper.
Just before you put the vote, Mr Mayor, I think I was the seconder, not Councillor McLaughlin.
Yeah, you were the seconder.
Yeah, you've got.
But I just heard somebody mentioned Councillor McLaughlin.
It was mixed up that Councillor McLaughlin was the mover. It was Councillor Whipper and yourself.
Thank you.
So it was registered. All in favour of the recommendation, please raise your card. Councillor, I'm going to have this recorded. Councillors Gare, Halstead, Andrews, Nelson, Turland, Whipper and McLaughlin. Those against? Councillor Scanlon, well done. Now we'll move over to operation 11.1, land acquisition. Somebody move it go into closed. Move Councillor McLaughlin, seconded Councillor Nelson. Put that. All in favour? Carried. 11.2, Lackey Park Regional Sporting Hub Master Plan Adoption, page 10. Move Councillor Andrews. And seconded by Councillor McLaughlin. Now, is there any debate on the recommendation? Do you want any comment from staff? Do you want any introduction?
Yes.
An introduction, I think, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Mr Trippitt.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through the chair, thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to introduce this report for the adoption of the Lackey Park Regional Sporting Hub Master Plan. The draft master plan was placed on exhibition on the 30th of June following a council meeting on the 24th of June approving the exhibition. The master plan was on exhibition for in excess of the required time period. A total of 19 submissions were received from the public, with a staggering 741 visits to the webpage. Overall, the feedback was positive, with majority support demonstrated for the master plan and also a sentiment of let's just get it done. A summary of the submissions is in the attachments with general responses for your reference. Moving forward, staff consulted the New South Wales Office of Sport, who provided advice, and council engaged a specialist consultant to undertake an independent review of the project by way of a feasibility study. In summary, the feasibility study suggests that the Lackey Park Regional Sporting Hub clearly aligns with the Office of Sport and state government's strategic drivers and objectives. The Office of Sport have also indicated their interest and support in this project and validated it as a regional sporting hub. The project scope has always encompassed the vision for a regional sporting hub, which consists of both outdoor and indoor facilities. And based on recent consultation with Mossvale District Basketball Association, we have reached an in-principle agreement to which will be formalised in the very near future in order to get both projects shovel ready. And just to wrap up, gentlemen, ultimately we'll take a whole of government approach to bring this project to fruition in order to shape the sporting future for the region. Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions? Councillor McLaughlin and then Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just given the amount of money that's sloshing around at the moment, is there any opportunity in the near future, now that once we get this out there for the grant funding, how sure are we that we can get it in the near future?
Through you, Mr. Paul will take that on board.
Look, Councillor McLaughlin, I'm going to be cautious in the answer because the project is still at its early planning stages. We don't have any detailed design of things like drainage, car parking, traffic, or in actual fact the buildings themselves. So in terms of having a shovel-ready project where we have a firm costing, we're not there.
Okay.
So history has told us that you need to be very cautious about taking projects forward before they're ready. So we are trying to get this project as quickly as possible, shovel ready, and at a point where we know what's required down there, and we've got a good handle on what the costs are and how we would stage this project. That's not to say we wouldn't try and grab some money if there was some around to help us move that process forward.
Good.
We're not really ready to grab a grant and build this yet because there's a lot more work to be done.
Thanks, Mr. Paul. Appreciate that. Well said.
Thank you, Councillor Scandit, then Councillor Andrews.
A question for Mr. Paul, please, Mr. Mayor. Granted, this is a great project and one that is going to be well received by the community. Why haven't we done a master plan that includes the basketball stadium, who have been active for nearly 10 years? And I know numerous mentions in the report, Mr. Paul, of the need to get forward with them on that.
Mr. Trippier.
Well, again, I might answer that. I might make a comment, and I'm happy for you to add to it. Look, Councillor Scanner, that's not really correct. I mean, there is community land down there and there is private land. Now, the Basketball Association have been going down a path for a number of years, as we're all aware, with a vision for their land and what they want to do there. Now, we have been in communication with them, and up until recently, I guess, there was a clear understanding about how we could integrate these two projects potentially. It went down a path in recent times where they took a different tack and they had a different option where they wanted to really change the focus to indoor sport. That's been to the Sport and Rec Committee, and the Sport and Rec Committee didn't agree with that particular focus. As I've said, we post that meeting had a conversation with Paul Barthiki from the Lost Vale Basketball Association, and out of that, there's agreement being reached about us working together to make sure that the whole precinct is planned in a way where it can be seen as one project. And that doesn't mean it will be delivered all at once because it's a massive project and there's a lot of money involved. What we are trying to do is get an integrated approach where we have a vision for that whole precinct, both indoor and outdoor sport, both the privately owned land and the public land. And that's where we're moving at the moment. So we're particularly focusing on things like traffic, parking, drainage, and all of those critical things that need to be looked at before we get into the detail. I'm happy if Mr. Trippier wants to add anything to that.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. You would agree, though, that it makes sense to have one master plan for both, particularly seeing that for some years they've been pushing for a combined indoor multi-purpose stadium that would accommodate a number of sports, including soccer, cricket, netball and the like, in addition to basketball. Surely that's one master plan.
Well, it is. Councillor Scanner, what I'm saying is that the Moss Vale Basketball preceded the work that we've done around Lucky Park. We are now integrating those two visions.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you. Well, why wouldn't we do that now?
We are.
Thank you.
Well, that's not what the resolution says.
Excuse me.
Just to clarify,
I'll get a clarification from Mr. Trippier.
Our current master plan does indicate the indoor facility on our plans, so it's not as if we've left them out at all.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews, then who else had the hand up? Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I'm not sure where the debate's going now. I think Councillor Turner may wish to ask a question.
Yeah, if we're on a question, we're on a question. Councillor Turner.
No, I think we should possibly engage Ben Quilty to help us raise some funds for it.
I'll take that as a tongue-in-cheek question comment.
I won't go there again.
Councillor Andrews, you may lead the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm obviously delighted to see this master plan of the Lackey Park Regional Sporting Hub arrive at council tonight. And probably 3.5 years, and it's a credit to staff and for Councillor Scandrett's benefit, you'll find that this master plan doesn't directly incorporate the basketball stadium, and their project, but with the great work of staff and their negotiating skills, you'll find that as this goes forward, that it will all seem to be one and the same, because it will be an incorporation of both facilities. Once again, I'm delighted that we've come this far. Everything that Mr. Tremere spoke about earlier, I don't need to repeat any of that. It is quite genuinely a regional sporting precinct where we'll attract major sporting events in a number of sports, as will with basketball tournaments. I'm hopeful that eventually in years to come that netball may move their activities to Lackey Park. Just also on the social aspect, just coming from the report, the master plan is designed to ensure that all visitors to the facility can access the amenities, playground, exercise stations, training facilities and the parking areas via safe pathways and meet Australian standards and in close proximity to public transport. I urge councils to support this master plan, and once again, I'm delighted that it's arrived. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. We've got Councillor Turner, McLaughlin and Nelson, but if we're all going to speak in favour of it, then it may extend a positive outcome. Councillor Turner, you're on mute.
Page 62 will give you the roadmap of where this project is moving forward. And it's exciting to see that Councillor Andrews and the committee has put forward that by March 2021, this project will be moving forward after community consultation. So I congratulate you and your committee, Councillor Andrews, for getting this project to where it is today. And it should be and will be, hopefully, part of our destination planning, because it is a project that will bring income to the Shire.
Thank you, Councillor Turland. Councillor McLaughlin, I think, had his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll be quick. I just wanted to congratulate Councillor Andrews. I've been on that committee a while, but I know he's gone, he spent his whole life involved in sports, whether playing football, on football committees, playing hockey, all sorts of things. So sport runs in his blood, I know, and I've got to congratulate him and staff with regard to moving this forward. And yeah, that's great. It's going to be a great action. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor. Who else had their card up? Councillor
Nelson. Yeah, just quickly, Mr. Mayor, I'm particularly pleased that the basketball have come on board with this project. So that's great. And also it's terrific to see that council's showing a little bit of vision with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillors Whipple and Ben Halstead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just congratulations to Councillor Andrews and the committee and the staff involved in this. This is, again, one of those things, build it and they will come. There's no doubt about it. And I think that we've been sort of idealising a facility like this for a long, long time. And I'm glad to see that it, again, is starting to manifest and materialise. So job well done. I'll be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Councillor Halstead.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, it's a very. I'm not muted. I can assure you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now.
Yeah, we've had. Quite frank, this whole evening has been bad from an IT point of view. I don't know what the problem is, but anyway, look, the report's well done. The proposals are sound, but what really annoys me is the proposition from the individual council that tries to discredit the thing based again on rumour and innuendo, I would suggest. But so I'll be supporting the report.
Thank you, councillor Halstead, and I would be extraordinarily disappointed if we didn't get a unanimous decision on this one. But congratulations to the committee and you, councillor Andrews. Bit like councillor Whipper on the previous one, you've got to sit there, dig your heels in, and do the yards to get the result. And hopefully we will get the result on the previous as well as we do on this one. But it comes back to good planning. And that is something that was raised earlier on. What projects have we got shovel ready? To do them shovel ready, it costs money, but that is a bit like building a good house. You've got to get your foundations right. And if you don't get them right, over a period of time, the whole thing will come to pieces in some form or another. So look forward to getting a bit more future designs done and where we can apply for grants and look at some self-funding projects. Councillor Andrews, you're right to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in summing up, I just want to really highlight the extraordinary work by staff and assets, in particular over the last 3 years, but most especially in the last 4 months where they were able to set up and then get a result of a feasibility study inside 3 months. It was incredible to get this to the meeting tonight by achieving that. And I thank them and I congratulate them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. It never goes astray. All in favour of the recommendation, please raise your card. There we go. We have a unanimous. Hey. Moving to 11.3, tender for transport and disposal of shredded organic. I think Councillor McLaughlin is moving this going to closed.
I'm moving that way, Mr. Mayor. Yes.
Yeah, seconder, Councillor Nelson. Any discussion? When I put it, Councillor Scandrett.
Mr. Mayor, whilst the tender part of this needs to go into close, I recognise that. There is an interest in the public on, could Councillor McLaughlin turn his, thank you, in the public in terms of this change in the service we provide at the RRC. So could I suggest that we have a brief introduction and put the vote up to move it into closed?
No, the recommendation has been moved and seconded. Unless you put up an amendment, then I will just put the vote. So there's no amendment, so I'll put the vote. All in favour, please raise your card. Those are carried unanimously again. We move to 12.1.72, and that is development applications determined from the 29th September to the 25th of October. Do I have a mover? Councillor Nelson. A seconder? Councillor Whipper. Is there any discussion on those being determined? Then I'll put the recommendation. All in favour? Those against? Carried. Move to 12.2. Development applications received from the 29th of September to 25th of October. A mover, Councillor Turland, and seconded Councillor McLaughlin. Is there any discussion? Councillor Halstead, have you got a question on any of them? It appears, Councillor...
No, I don't have. I was just trying to get in a second.
Yeah,
I was trying to second the motion, that's all. No problem.
Yeah, you appear to move your hand and about 5 seconds later it comes through on the TV screen. So you do have technical problems there today.
Oh, I think there's technical problems up here. I can't see too much at all.
Yeah, right.
Looks like you're frozen, Ken, too. Yeah.
Okay, do we have any, I know there's a few councillors who have some items in relation to this. Development applications received. Are there any item numbers, councillors, you wish to bring out? Oh, there they are. Come on the screen.
We can't see them.
We can't see the screen, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we'll try and get it up.
Michelle, do you want to unshare and reshare it?
Then if I can.
I can see the screen, Mr. Mayor.
Who can't see the screen?
Hang on, it's coming. Yeah, I've got it now. Got it now. Thank you.
Okay, so there's those 3 items and then the one on the weekly circular. Are there any others that councillors wish to discuss or bring forward? No? Then I'll put the recommendation as moved by councillors Turland and McLaughlin. All in favour, please raise your card. We have that carried. We move over to page 12.3, adoption of the Destination Highlands strategy. Do I have a mover? Councillor Andrews and Councillor Whipper. Okay, so we've had the...
I think Councillor Whipper's trying to speak.
Yeah, Councillor Whipper, do you wish to speak? You're on mute.
You're on mute.
You're still on mute.
That sounds better, doesn't it? You can hear me now. I was just trying to capture your attention, Mr. Mayor. I did send in a motion earlier that I was wishing to put.
I have that motion. I didn't know whether you were still submitting it. Council, can we put that up? Councillor Andrews moved the strategy. Is there a seconder for the strategy?
I'll second Councillor Whipper.
Your seconder for the strategy, Councillor McLaughlin.
Can we have an introduction on this, given the what was?
I'm looking at a mover and seconder for the motion.
Yeah, I think you've got that. Yeah. I just think we need to rebut some of the earlier statements made, Mr. Mayor, that I thought were very...
Hang on.
Now, Councillor Whipper is giving notice of an amendment, which is, I think, going up on the screen now.
A point of order, Mr. Mayor.
And wait a minute, has been seconded by Councillor Scandrick. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, you've got Councillor Whipper as seconding the motion.
Right, Councillor McLaughlin has, I noticed that when Councillor Whipper spoke, and he clarified his position. So Councillor Andrews has moved the original and seconded by Councillor McLaughlin.
Correct.
Has been put up by Councillor Whipper and seconded by Councillor Scandrick. Right. Now, that's the order I called them. And I'll ask you, but there's been a request for a bit of an introduction.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry?
Mr. Rosa, I'll speak to.
Yes, Mr. Rosa, is you online, Mr. Rosa? We are trying to get to Mittagong.
I mean, I can introduce it.
If we can't get Mr. Rosa, I'll get Mr. Pepping to introduce, but it is Mr. Rosa that we're having trouble getting him on. So if he does get on and is hearing this first part of the introduction, then I'll ask Mr. Pepping to introduce it. And if Mr. Rosa gets on, then he will have the right to make comment as well. Mr. Pepping.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to put before Council the Southern Highlands Destination Strategy 2020 to 2030. Following the public exhibition of the plan, and to outline the submissions that were received. And we heard from Vaughan earlier this evening, who made representations in regard to this matter. As it was advised, when it was exhibited as a Southern Highlands Destination Plan 2020-2030, but it was always envisaged that this would be an overarching strategy for economic development and tourism for the Southern Highlands. So based on the submissions that we received, I believe there was about 33 individual submissions that could be traced through various forms through the different forums that we had. And those submissions are summarised in attachment 2 to the report, and council has also received a full set of those submissions. A number of changes have been recommended to the plan, and they are legible throughout the plan in green. I guess the biggest issue to emphasise is that this is a overarching strategic plan, and it doesn't go unrecognised that there aren't detailed actions and key performance indicators in there, but the way that this was developed, and it was commenced in late 2019, before the bushfire disasters, before COVID, etc. So council had agreed back in 2017 on a number of key sector developments for the Southern Highlands, and the intention of this strategy was to recognise those and to put those in the forefront of our community, as well as the interests of people wanting to set up in this particular area. So the strategy is an overarching strategy. Following the incorporation of this particular strategy, it would be our objective to then develop the actions around those strategies. And this is a 10-year strategy, so those actions would be based on short, medium and long term in that 10-year period. The actions are obviously quite complex and have to be dealt with in significant detail and consultation with the industry representatives. So it is hoped that it goes forward tonight, which will enable the council staff to then commence those consultations with the different industry sectors to develop actions which are measurable, which are meaningful, and can be achieved not only by council, but the various partners that would feed into this particular document. So there's probably not much more for me to add to that. Unfortunately, I'm not too sure that we are getting Steve, Rosa or Jan. So I'm happy to take questions if councillors have them.
Councillor McLaughlin's question.
Well, I just think that Mr. Pepping was good. It's sort of a bit of a puts in context the rebuttal that we heard earlier in at the start of the meeting, where this whole document was derided as being useless, and I found that quite offensive. Yeah, but maybe you could go to a couple of the points that were raised earlier in the meeting and point out where we feel that they're incorrect.
Thank you, Councillor Walton. That's the crux of it.
Look, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I don't want to harp on what someone might have said in terms of the negativity of it. My experience being in local government for 30 years and having been part of a number of strategies, and as I used the example earlier today, council, in consultation with the community, has a community strategic plan that was done in 2010 to 2031. And in that plan, it has a number of goals and objectives. But what's more important is that it doesn't include the actions, because those actions come as part of our delivery plan and our operational plan. And it would be no different in this, in terms of setting those high strategic objectives of what the Southern Highlands is about and what we want to attract in terms of development sectors or industry sectors within this area. And advanced manufacturing, agribusiness, equine, education, tourism and hospitality, and aged care are the sectors that were agreed to by council back in 2017. So this strategy sends a clear message out to businesses wanting to come to the Southern Highlands. This is the areas that we're interested in establishing here. The actions and how we go about doing that are going to be quite varied and assigned to different people based on what their ability to deliver. And like I said, not all of those are going to be able to be delivered by council. There will be the private sector doing that. And the other thing is that both state and federal government have sent signals to councils and the community that there is going to be a lot of investment monies put towards rebuilding the economy in both New South Wales and Australia. Having this strategy in place again sends clear messages of the types of investments that we want to come into this area.
Just to follow up, that was very good, Mr. Pepping. The consequences of not passing this tonight will be?
Councillor Gottman, that really wasn't a question, it was a comment, but I'll go around the councillors for questions.
Yeah, that was a question, Mr. Mayor. It was.
I know, but it was your second. I'm trying to keep everybody to one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Okay. Just, it was a quick one. Righto. Fair enough.
Quick one. Yep. Councillor Turl.
When we changed our process in adopting that Mr. Rosa would take up the economic development portfolio as well as tourism, what was the brief that related to the change of that? The question I'm trying to get at is, what was the brief to Mr. Rosa back in 2019 or 2017, must have been 2019, and when we changed our process?
Yeah, through the chair. So back in the previous economic development manager departed council at the end of 2018, and in early 2019, a decision was made by the general manager and executive that the portfolios of economic development and tourism and events would be merged as a single entity, because tourism is a subset of the broader economic development portfolio. So as a result of that, we have a group manager of tourism and economic development. We have a coordinator of tourism, and we have a coordinator of economic development. So this destination plan brings together those two portfolios rather than having a standalone economic development strategy and a standalone tourism strategy.
All right. Question? Then Councillor Whipper, then Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you. Mr. Pepping, since this went on exhibition, it was exhibited as a Southern Highlands destination plan. There were some comments that came back, and then we're now labelled it as a strategy. So would there be a concession from staff to suggest that there might have been a bit of misleading of the community as to what this document was?
Thank you, through the chair. Look, that was no way intended. There was obviously an understanding by certain people as to what the meaning of a plan is as opposed to a strategy. Our vision for this was always to be an overarching blueprint of economic development and the sectors that we wanted to encourage into the Shire, be it a plan or a strategy. You'll find quite often that they are interchangeable depending on what preferences individuals have. But to assure that there was no intentions of confusion or anything, again, we've rebranded it as a strategy, which is consistent with the other documents that Council has received in the recent past of strategies.
Just a quick comment from me, if I may. Councillor, there are varying levels of plans. We have a community strategic plan. We have a delivery program. We have an operating plan. For some people, those words are interchangeable. In local government, they can have different meaning in different contexts. So the word plan, the strategy has been substituted for the word plan, I think, to just give a bit more clarity. But from the council staff's point of view and what we were trying to produce, it was always going to be a high-level strategic document. Call it a plan, call it a strategy. The detail will come later.
This is the framework. Other question was Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it correct, Mr. Pepping, that the MPs for Wallandilly and Goulburn are on the stakeholders group. Am I correct in that?
Mr. Pepping?
Through the chair, yes, they, and look, that's not an invitation of council. That was an invitation of the community members that brought that group together, but they are sitting members of the Southern Highlands Key Stakeholders Group.
Right, and have we got any shovel-ready projects at this time that group and this strategy or plan, as it was called, could advance promptly, or is it it's not quite time critical?
Mr. Pepping?
Look, through the chair, I'm not too sure I can really answer that. Again, I can't speak for what different businesses or entrepreneurs or whatever might be doing in the area. There is a lot of work being done in terms of equine and agribusiness, and we have engaged.
I'm sorry, I qualified that. It was about grants, Mr. Pepping, that I was speaking, not commercial.
We are certainly using grant money for legwork type work that's going on at the moment. Now we have as part of the bushfire recovery money, we allocated $100,000 to the employment of a coordinator for agribusiness and equine. And that person is doing a lot of groundwork in establishing what this area can offer in terms of agribusiness and tourism. We recently got $50,000 to do a feasibility study on a produce hub. Again,
thank you. What you're telling me is there's no shovel-ready projects that are for grants. Thank you.
Can you just allow staff to finish? You asked a question. Please let them finish.
I wasn't getting the answer to my question, Mr. Mayor.
No, he just verbaled them, Mr. Mayor. He just verbals everybody.
The tape will show. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, it will.
Okay.
Verbals everyone.
Going into Councillor Halstead has the last question. We've got to start the debate on this, or we're just chasing out.
Mr. Rosa is now joined.
Oh, Mr. Rosa.
And Jamie Campbell as well.
Can you hear me? You're on mute, Mr. Rosa. Can you hear me?
Maybe not.
No.
I think we need to move on, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, we'll have to move on. So, Councillor Turlin, had you asked? You haven't asked a question. Last question.
No, I did ask a question to Mr. Pepping, but so do you want me another one? Look, just to clarify, the stakeholders group has many projects on the foot at the moment moving forward, even to the point of having a resilient hub at the TAFE, all provided through the process of the group that have got together, Destination South Surround, I believe. So look, there is lots of things that the key stakeholders group is doing at this point, and Mr. Pepping is aware because he comes to those meetings with Mr. Rosa as well. Just to clarify what Councillor Scandrett was going on, he's not part of that group, so he doesn't know.
All right, well, I think that's a debating point. Anybody wish to make we're in debate. Does anybody wish to speak to the recommendation in the first instance? Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, I'll speak to the motion. I'll be voting for the motion, Mr. Mayor. If we defer this, we'll lose ground. But the Southern Highlands Destination Strategy is meant to be a blueprint, strategic document established the preferred business sector that resonate with our community and agreeing on high-level objectives, which is the what. Once this is adopted by council, then council staff will work with business sectors to develop the actions undertaking under an action plan, which is the how, based on short, medium and long-term timeframes, the when. This is exactly how the Community Strategic Plan was developed 10 years ago, the what, followed by 3 delivery plans, the latest being the 2017-2021 delivery plan, the how and the when. This is the common practice in government agencies, so that when unforeseen situations occur, all you are tinkering with are the actions and not the higher level strategy, which if solid should not need altering. I'm having a bit more faith in the staff than Mr. Bourne is, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry that there's nothing in the document for Mr. Bourne. I think this strategy, once we adopt it, will allow the council the ability to access any grant funding that becomes available from the next state budget. And if we defer this, this will just put it into lockdown, Mr. Mayor. You know, with this group, you told us you met with Mr. Clark and the other fellows, and they sort of started to come around and see the point of view of what council is actually trying to do. But I think we should move forward with this. Time will tell if council's strategic approach provides the direction for the community and business, or if Mr. Burns' assessment, it will be a turkey. Thanks, Mr.
Thank you. Then Councillor Whipper, then I'll want to speak before then the Councillor McLaughlin. And
So
then
at the moment, Mr. Sorry.
Before will be Andrews. Councillor Whipper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the moment, I'm speaking against the motion and for the amendment. Look, I don't think if we defer this, we lose anything. I think, in fact, quite the opposite. I think if we defer this, we may get it right. And I think it's really important. This is a major investment we've made, and I believe we have to listen to the sector. And we've got Councillor Nelson saying that, okay, this is your big vision statement. We'll put it out there, but we will work with the businesses after that. Well, what we're hearing from the business sector, from the stakeholders group, is that they haven't been consulted to the degree they believe they should have been, and they haven't had that contribution. So I don't know, we can take assurances that that'll happen. Now, when we decided as a council to do away with the Economic Development Committee, we put a lot of faith in the stakeholders group. In fact, I think we encourage them to start moving forward and to create some opportunities. There are, as you said, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Pepping is on that stakeholders group. I am not as a councillor, but involved with the arts and culture cluster as well. And I know that Councillor Turlin goes along regularly to those meetings as well. And they're very productive. Now, when we've got the stakeholders group, who are major stakeholders, coming out and raising concerns, I think we should just not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're not voting, I don't want to vote against this, but I think we should defer it. And as the amendment says, take the time to sit down and make sure we can include some deliverables, some outcomes, and make it a valuable document with that vision there, of course. But I think we need to be a bit more refined in those outcomes and those KPIs. Let's get it right. I believe other shires, they incorporate you know, the strategy within their business plan, and they include all those outcomes as well. And we probably don't have to go too far to look at that. Now, there's been a suggestion by the stakeholders that this is more of a discussion paper. That's open to interpretation, but I think that the mere fact that it's created this discussion would certainly support that assessment. Now, let's just defer it. Let's get it right. Let's ensure that we get the industry on board ASAP and put some deliverables there so we can have some things to actually move forward with and seek funding for. I think we need to provide that level of confidence, Mr. Mayor. So I'm asking councillors not to vote against this deferral, but to support it, because as I said, deferring isn't destroying. I think it gives us a chance to get it right.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Scandra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll be supporting the motion, and I think this was articulated very well by Mr. Pepping when you describe what this was about. We're never going to please all the people all the time with this document. There'll always be some group that feels as if they didn't get a big enough say. But this is an overarching strategic document. And I see a lot of the changes that were put in this document, and I appreciate a lot of these from the community, from different stakeholders that don't have, that aren't in the key stakeholder group. So there are other community members in particular the Botanic Garden people who put in a massive amount, and also, you know, maybe the federal government can take a lead on Australia-China memorandum of cooperation. I mean, we've got a lot of things in here, and I think, you know, it's a document that we need to have. And I think, as the acting general manager pointed out earlier in the day, if we haven't got one of these, when you go and sit down in front of a minister and you put your hand up for some money and you want this and you want that, they say, where's your, you know, where's this come from? What does your community want? If we don't get this out there, if we don't, you know, get this, we're just going to delay things. We've got one meeting before Christmas, and when's it going to come back? You know, I think delaying this, it mightn't be perfect, councillors, but I think it's a pretty good document. It's been out there for a long time for people to make comment, and I see the stakeholder group, okay, they haven't got all their way and they're not particularly happy with some of the things because we've got no deliverables. But Mr. Pepping, he explained all that. He explained what this was about. And this always had to be a council document. It's a council document. If they want to go off and do their own document, sure, we like their support. We want them to have them on board. That's great. But there are other community groups here. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Scandler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I'm supporting Councillor Whipper's amendment to defer this is, as Councillor McLaughlin points out, we are close to Christmas and then it's March. And we could use that time, quite frankly, to just get some more detail into this, particularly listening to the key stakeholders group who, with the MPs and all the major organisations in the Shire, must be given some listening. I'm mindful of the fact that all of the shires around us, Mr. Mayor, Kiama, Shell Harbour, Shoalhaven, Wallumbilla and Wollongong, all have strategies and plans, and most of them are quite detailed and in fact have deliverables and KPIs in them. And that's one of the reasons I'm supporting Councillor Whipper's amendment, is because I want to see performance outcomes. Our Economic Development Committee, which I used to chair, we were trying to set deliverable times. We were trying to have projects that had timelines in it. Now, for example, Wollongong has a jobs target in it. Wallumbilla has a jobs target with short and long-term strategies and short and long-term projects. We don't. Shoalhaven, every strategy is supported by recommended actions. And there's a section on implementing and monitoring. Shell Harbour, each headline strategy is supported by strategic priorities, issues and project details. And there's a summary table there. Kiama, similar. That's where I think this has got to go. So the amendment that Councillor Whip and I have up there is to get around the table with key stakeholder group and others, if interested, to try and just put some extra detail in there that will satisfy not only the industry, but the community at large, who have been waiting a long time for this. It's not a criticism of Mr. Rosa and Ms. Campbell's work, not in any way, but it's a way to make it even better. So councillors, I hope you'll encourage our staff to just tidy this up and get a bit more into it, so that it is something that we can go out to the MPs with in conjunction with shovel-ready projects, which we've heard there are no big ones. But once we do, and one's coming in on short final now, namely Lackey Park, this is the sort of plan that will give those a good push and hopefully get them over the line in terms of MP support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews, before you haven't spoken, so you'll be Councillor Turland. Are you speaking in favour? Councillor Turland, are you speaking in favour?
In favour of the amendment.
Okay, then Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, Mr. Bourne, who came on, we heard earlier, simply came on and spoke and had the clear goal of discrediting the document, which is his right. I'll make that very clear. It is his right. It's the poor language or the type of language that he used to discredit the document that I found disrespectful. Doesn't help any cause. And the document is called a strategy. It's quite clear. Whatever happened before and changing from a plan to a strategy doesn't matter. The document before us is a strategy. Mr. Pepping, Mr. Bourne also made it very clear that there were no real expectations or actions. And I hear that often. As Mr. Pepping said, an action plan will come in 2021. Make it clear, actions will follow with a very clear plan. It's locked in. To push this back to February next year, honestly, councillors, it's madness. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr.
Well, on the 28th of August 2019, an update on tourism economic development destination strategy. We had a workshop in the council. And after that, we had a briefing session with the Southern Highlands Stakeholders Group after the presentation and the process that was put in place by the previous General Manager. This was August on the 28th, 2019. In 2020, we've had a disastrous year. And what we've got after spending many hundreds of thousands of dollars on previous economic stakeholders, economic development documents, never endorsed by council, ever, we now have this situation of when the only time in our history to have the key deliverables in place right now is the most important time. And what we have is just a motherhood statement document, which we've seen before in multiple documents. As said before, Wallandilly has a plan in place with deliverables. And it was done by the same consultant as ours. I would suggest that we paid $50,000 for a document that's cut and paste off many other documents. There is no deliverables, timeline, tangible projects, KPIs that bring this together as a document to help our community at this particular time, as it's the worst time that we've ever been through in probably 100 years. It's the only time that we needed clear, decisive items to be moving forward to claim, if we could, grants with. And it's been forgotten. We've lost it. We've wasted probably $500,000 in our previous economic development process to date. Did we not learn anything from that? I mean, it's just extraordinary. We get to the point and we don't deal with the key stakeholders group, which has a consortium of lots of business houses within the Shire. Is somebody speaking or is it an echo? I can't.
Somebody's got their computer on or their Facebook page on. I don't know, Councillor.
I don't know, but it just echoes back. And I've not got mine on, I've got earpieces in. So I just hear it coming back to me. So before we move forward on this, we need to take a deep breath, let the key stakeholders group and any other party that wishes to be involved in serious project management. The other issue you see in this document is nothing or very little about
your time has expired.
Nothing about the environment or development approvals.
Thank you. Now, before you have your right of reply, Councillor Andrews, Councillor Halstead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I haven't in any way discussed this with any particular councillor in detail at all, but it does concern me quite a bit. For example, statements made about Mr. Bourne, quite frank, worry me. I mean, he's a genuine stakeholder who speaks on behalf of the wider tourism sector. And I listen to what he says and I listen to what those people say if they happen to approach me. To date, they haven't. I do not believe that the state government, for example, at the moment, would view this strategy other than basic. So what's missing is the deliverables that Councillor Turlin spoke about.
Thank you. Before you speak, Councillor Andrews, I'm going to speak. As I said, I met with the stakeholders group this morning, some representatives, and I have also been very much early on involved in getting the stakeholders group established. So I am very happy to work with the stakeholders group. I respect their commitment to their industries and what they have offering to the Southern Highlands. In saying that, we have been criticised up, down, downhill, wherever, not making decisions. Council can't make a decision. They're going to defer it again. Well, sorry, not this mayor. I will be supporting the framework, the recommendation, and I'll read, and if the council has read the fourth paragraph on the background on page 94, it provides council with a framework which can be used as a foundation for a development and implementation of action plans in partnership with relevant industry and community partners. That is what this blueprint is going to do. Putting it off, as Councillors Nelson and McLaughlin and Andrews have said, it will be February next year. It could even be March. There is a budget coming down next week, state budget. And there is financial gains to be made by those who have a blueprint in place. Not for those who can't make a decision. And it does not stop us from working with a community group or community groups in establishing their parameters that they want us to see us in a way of going forward. So I'll be supporting the recommendation moved by Councillors Andrews and seconded by Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Andrews, your right of reply.
I'll waive that right, thank you.
Okay, then if that be the case, then I'll go to the vote. That all those in favour of the amendment, please raise your card. Councillor Scandrett, Whipper, Turlin, and Halstead in favour of the amendment. Those against the amendment, Councillors Nelson, Andrews, McLaughlin and Gare. I declare the vote for each. I'll use my casting vote to defeat the amendment. The amendment is now defeated. I will now put the motion. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your card. Councillors Nelson, Andrews, McLaughlin and Gare. I declare, and I will use my casting vote.
I can ask for against.
And those against? Same way, Councillors Halstead, Turlin, Whipper and Scandrett. I'll use my casting vote to move the motion forward. The motion is carried. We now move to page 99 of the business paper. Proposed council meetings. Now, Councillor Nelson suggested that the 14th of April be deleted in the month of 2021. So subject to that.
I'm happy to second that.
Councillor Nelson is moving the ordinary meeting dates be as printed with the exception of the 14th of April, which is to be deleted. So
I'm happy to second that.
Second, Councillor McLaughlin. So there'll be one meeting date next year, in April next year. Any debate, any discussion?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I just quickly, if councillors are happy. It would certainly assist the staff. If you've been around the preparation of reports and minutes, you'd appreciate that you'd appreciate the break at Christmas time, which the councillors get as well. But not having a meeting on the 14th would allow that the council still complies with having the required 10 meetings a year. That's the statutory requirement, and obviously we meet twice a month and easily meet that 10 statutory numbers. So it just would allow the staff to possibly have a week off without being in the grind of continually doing the minutes, the agenda up and the meeting and so forth. So actually it was a suggestion by Councillor Scandrett a couple of years ago that made me think about it again when this came. So that's the reasoning behind the idea of deleting the 14th. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Is there any debate in relation to this then? Then I'll put the recommendation. All in favour, please raise your card. And it's carried unanimously. We move over to 12.5, 2020 Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference. Appointment of delegate, as Councillor Nelson has given indication he will not be able to attend. My suggestion, councillors, is that no replacement be nominated unless somebody wants to, because it's going to be a conference by Zoom. It's going to be relatively short, but you will have to sit through the conference. So my thought is that somebody move a recommendation is that the three councillors be the nominated delegates as printed.
Happy to move that way, Mr. Mayor.
Move Councillor McLaughlin, second Councillor Andrews. Question, Councillor Scandrett.
Mr. Mayor, I must just make the comment. I put my card up, but other councillors speak. Look, I think you might want to just consider having not a fourth councillor, but a reserve councillor if somebody is prepared to be approved as that.
Well, that
just in case somebody's ill or whatever on the day.
All right. Well, if that be the case, nobody indicated that they wanted to attend, Councillor Scandrett. That is why I suggested what has been moved and seconded. Does anybody wish to be an alternate?
Can I nominate the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Andrews?
Yeah, I didn't ask for. I said, does anybody want to nominate?
I just volunteered him. He's happy.
He's not volunteering. So, Ken, you've moved the recommendation that the delegates stay the same without an additional. So that's what's been moved. I'll put the recommendation. All in favour, please raise your card. Right, carried. We move over to minutes of the Heritage Advisory Committee, moved by Councillor McLaughlin, seconded by Councillor Nelson. Is there any discussion in relation to the minutes of the Councillor Scanlon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could the chairman just advise whether the committee ever considered all of the work that's being done at the Briars?
Well, that's a question that's not in relation to the minutes. So it's a question.
I think. Well, look, I'm happy to answer. I'm happy to answer that, Mr. Mayor. Look, it has been discussed.
I'll just make the comment. We are dealing with minutes, not with issues away from the minutes.
Yeah, you're right.
Scandrett, give Councillor McLaughlin a phone call.
Yeah, good idea.
All right. So, Councillor Turlin, you're on mute.
Item page 113, item 55.4, the Station Street project update. Can Councillor McLaughlin give us a understanding of what was said at that briefing part of it?
Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, previously the committee had asked for a bit of a verbal update. Councillor Nelson and I supported the idea that a staff member could come and do a presentation, but basically I think we by the time we'd got to it, we'd run out of time for the council officer wasn't available. So basically they were directed to your say and the material that yeah, we were hoping to have that, and it might be something that we can reschedule and get back on the agenda. We've got another a meeting coming up on Wednesday, so Friday, so there might be an opportunity to revisit that. But it was a verbal one, but we were hoping to get a staff member to run through the presentation that we had as councillors, but it was school holidays, there was people away, and we didn't have the staff there, so that was the reason. Does that satisfy you, Councillor?
I suppose the question is the Heritage Advisory Committee, what is their position on the Station Street project?
The council resolution, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's not the it's the committee. It's not the council.
Yeah. Oh, look.
Resolution not there for councillors to even ask the question. Councillor McLaughlin.
Look, I'm happy to have a call from Councillor Turland and I can go through it with him, but I don't think it's something that really needs to be discussed in a council meeting because there are various views, as there are in all committees. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else in the business for the Heritage Committee? I put the recommendation as moved by Councillor McLaughlin and Nelson. All in favour, carried. We move over to page 7.1. Question with notice from Councillor Halstead. Councillor Halstead, can I just make the comment that we were supposed to be on do an inspection today, but that was it today or last week, was it?
Well, we weren't going to Bloomfield close to.
Oh, well, Councillor House said you have the floor. You're a bit like the
had been moved earlier on the year, you know, to have an information. They're just not listening. Unbelievable. Mr. Mayor, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Councillor Halstead.
Okay, I was just going to say that you could remove it because I was aware that we moved this same sort of thing earlier here, and obviously things were going to transpire, just not look at it as soon as possible. So I'm quite happy if this is just taken off the agenda.
All right, we're going to do an inspection. Okay, Mr. Paul would like to make a comment.
That's the usual way.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, as a statement was made by the gentleman this afternoon in the public forum, I met on site out there with a number of council staff. Well, it was quite some time ago now, it was back in August, and gave a commitment that I would seek some independent advice on a number of matters out there. Specifically, I wanted to get some legal advice about some of the issues that were raised in regard to legality or otherwise of the drainage arrangements that have been provided for, particularly the lots along the private access road. We've sought that advice and got that advice. I also gave an undertaking that I would get some independent engineering advice in regard to the drainage solutions that have been approved out there and whether those drainage solutions comply with our DCP, etc. And also whether the actual works on ground were in accordance with those approvals. That's taken a little longer than I would have liked. Yeah, it came in yesterday. To ensure that there was true independence, if I can put it that way, and it's no reflection on any council staff in this organisation, I asked the Group Manager of Infrastructure Services, who is a very experienced engineer, particularly in drainage matters, to draft the brief that was given to the independent engineers that he actually identified. Sorry? Somebody want to say something? No, okay, I'll keep going. So I got independent advice as much as I could internally from the most senior engineer that I have in infrastructure services to provide that brief to assist me to engage that independent engineering advice. Now that's taken a little longer than I'd hoped, to be frank, but we've got that advice yesterday. I've not yet seen it, or I've not yet had the opportunity to have it walk through with me. What I'd like to do is have the opportunity to review that, get some feedback from the staff, and I'm quite happy to then have an information session with the councillors and be very honest and open about what that advice has told us.
Okay, but I...
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councillor House.
Mr. Mayor. I think it gets back to communication. Now, I listen to all of what Mr. Paul tells me, and I don't disagree that it's taken probably a lot longer than he thought it might, and I think that would have been something that could have been anticipated way back. But he made the point very clear, Mr. Stephen, that he hadn't heard anything since August. So the issue is communicating. Okay, you got something yesterday, but maybe somewhere on the line it would have been astute to have sent him something saying, look, you know, we're seeking this information and it's going to take a lot longer than I thought. Exactly what you've just said.
I have, Councillor Halstead. I've done that on a number of occasions. I've also apologised to Mr. Aaron Stevens that it was taking longer than I'd expected. I anticipated it would probably take a month. For various reasons, it's taken a bit longer, and I have communicated with him a couple of times and asked him to be patient. And I apologise that it's taken so long. I now have that information.
But we will do an inspection. I want to have everybody has their own ideas up there, so I think it would be good for councillors to meet on site on a given day, and we on a Wednesday, and we have a look. Councillor McLaughlin.
Just a question: was it privately certified? The drainage and this subdivision?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm being told no, it was done by council.
Okay. Thank you. Righto. The buck stops with us.
Well, I think in any event, Mr. Mayor, it should just be seconded and then carried. What's written there be noted.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Halstead. You're moving it. I'll get you, Councillor Turlin. Councillor Nelson seconding. Councillor Turlin.
Sorry, who's seconding it, me or Councillor Nelson?
Oh,
you said me.
I thought you were asking a question, so Councillor
No, I was putting my hand up to second it.
Councillor Turlin can second it, it's no problem. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Then if there's no further questions, then I'll put the recommendation.
I might just have a bit of a debate, if I may.
Well, there you go.
There we go. That's right.
Councillor Turlin.
So you seem to take tongue in cheek in relation to people's properties and their lives that are affected. No, listen, I've not said anything wrong yet. You've just smirked and smiled like it was a piece of somebody. This is somebody's life that we're dealing with here, and we have not dealt with them in a proper manner. Now, the issue is this has been going on for years, many years, and we've all had information from different people with their houses and pools being flooded. This is a critical, not a laughing matter, a critical bit of information that needs to be provided to all owners on the property.
Laughing, Councillor
You were laughing a few minutes ago, Councillor, Mr. Mayor, so don't blame Councillor whoever now is laughing. I can't see them, but I can see you. Now, the issue is it's a time management. You need to get back to people because this is affecting people's properties. A Section 68 was actually granted, which shouldn't have been, for a stormwater that doesn't comply. Now, how does that happen? Again, there's multiple questions that need to be resolved on this property, and it affects multiple properties, not just in this subdivision, other properties on the other side heading into Manfield Road. There's also an issue about contamination from the EPA. It's amazing it's got this far without council being slapped with a fine for allowing this silt and mud and rubbish that goes through unauthorised easements that aren't in place yet. You don't seem to understand what the issues are, Mr. Mayor. You keep shaking your head. The issues are it affects people's properties.
Correct.
It is their life. It is their whole life. It's not a laughing matter. It's a serious matter.
Nobody is laughing, Councillor Turland.
You were laughing when we
I
started.
was not laughing.
You were laughing. It's on the tape.
It was the fact that you had put your hand up. No. There is a recommendation that be moved and seconded and noted. Put it all in favour. Those against, carried. Notice of motion, Station Street deep dive, 18.1, page 160. Councillor Halstead, have you got your hand up? I can't hear anybody who wants to speak.
Well, I'm the mover of the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, do you have a seconder? Councillor Turland. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I put this question is because the community are asking various things about the deep dive report and where it's at and how we're going forward, particularly in the fact that the matter is becoming very topical at the moment. For example, on the matter of the bridge duplication, this depends on what you call an MOU. Which MOU? Because if it was the Station Street MOU, council's already decided that those modifications are not going to proceed at this time. I mean, yet we said that the second bridge was part of the Station Street project and part of its cost, which I said at the time came to some 42 million.
Right, Councillor Scanlon.
Well, anyone looking at the project from outside, Mr. Mayor, sees it differently, and they see that the second crossing at Wingecarribee Street was put up as part of the project, along with, at the time, a multi-storey car park across the road.
Councillor Scanlon, I will not have you making those allegations as you have done in the past. There's been no plans for a multi-storey car park, ever.
I'm glad you've gone on the record with that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, it is a wisp of, wouldn't it be great? It was a hard park in Sherwood Village. Thank you. Continue.
It was a multi-storey car park, and we moved to acquire part of Sherwood Village. That's in the minutes, Mr. Mayor.
No, Councillor.
Anyway, I don't seem to be able to have a uninterrupted discussion when I'm making my opinions. My opinions, not for you to be judge and jury on this. I'm just making my opinions as the mover of this motion. I mean, another example was that the existing signals were to be modified to include a right turn phase from Station Street west onto Wingecarribee Street across the bridge. Could somebody recognise Councillor Nelson? Because he's got his card up. Station Street, Bullway Street, the proposed signals there, they seem to have been removed from the project, and so on. So, Mr. Mayor, the reason I put this motion up is to get qualification responses from the staff on these matters, and therefore a written response will come back. Thank you.
On page 117.
That's right.
Thank you, Councillors Scanlon. Obviously, you didn't turn the page over to page 117. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, that's not a response.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have the floor. The reason I was holding my card up, Mr. Mayor, is so you can see it and acknowledge me when Councillor Scanlon was finished. I'm moving an amendment, Mr. Mayor, as follows: that having regard to the comments by staff, as detailed in the report, in relation to the Station Street deep dive be noted.
Okay, do you have a seconder? Councillor Andrews. Is there any, and do you wish to speak to a councillor?
Look, Mr Mayor, if you read what the resolution is there, I don't think it quite makes sense to me. But if you turn over the page as you suggested and read what the staff have said in relation to Councillor Scandrett's proposal in SD1, SD2 and SD5, the answers are there, Mr Mayor, and case closed, but be noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Turley.
Well, I'm still waiting for a response to why my question, with notice 2 weeks ago, that mentioned the weekly circular 36, which council had put statements of 2012, where the second bridge over Windsor Caribou Street was a critical link. Now, I put that in my question, or my notice of motion, I believe it is, not a question, and as a preamble, and it didn't actually make the business paper. And nobody's actually explained to me why that hasn't made it, but it's clear that in 2012, and only 4 weeks ago, in weekly circular 36, if you'd like to have a look at it, councillors, you'll see the statement made by council that it's a critical link, the bridge and other parts being the traffic lights. Now, as for the car parking, in 2012, our car park strategy, actually it's DCP 12 it was back in the old days, it actually showed a car park on the paddock across the road. I won't mention the people's names, Sherwood Village, it's enough. So it has been there for a long time. That was DCP 12. It's now been superseded. So the car park has been involved for a long, long period of time. The issue we have at the moment is, have we done a deep dive review of the project in its current form, knowing that in 2012 and only less than 4 weeks ago, it was sent to all councillors, and maybe you should read it and understand what it says, is that the second bridge is a critical link. Knowing that it probably can't be built, as it was said 2 weeks ago, that it's now 7.5 metres above the rail line. It can't happen. The other problem I see that seems to be short in detail at the moment is a traffic count. Has the traffic gone up or down since the project has started in 2016 and advertised to the community? Has it changed? Are people making a different route back to East Barrel by going through Range Road and Old South Road and not coming through the main town? Nobody knows. Have we done an updated traffic study? No, we haven't. We're just leaving our whole design on old information, not new information. So this project, if it starts without the proper process, there will be hell to play. I've actually just sent to you the motion that I put forward, which I'll just find it, which shows the road closure to public requirements. Now that was put forward by myself and Ken Halstead, Councillor Halstead, and it was on, for the staff to find it, the 27th of May 2020. And that was so that council will advertise any works done to comply with the New South Wales government requirements to conform in the business paper. Anyway, it is there, road closure, working in a public requirement as per the public. That was approved in theory. So 27th of May, that's what you need to look at.
Any other councillors? Then I will put the amendment as moved by.
Right a reply, Mr Mayor.
Reply, Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I know you didn't interrupt Councillor Turland, and he was confirming what I had said about the existence of a resolution to look at a car park across the way there, which was part of the deep dive report, that we had that in there. The consultation is a very relevant point, and particularly the fact that the only traffic study on this was done was on a Friday, I think, three and a half years ago. It hasn't been updated, nor has any of the other recommendations. So that's what this is about, is asking staff not to give us just a brief response on the back there, but to give us a detailed response. For example, on the signalisation of those intersections, and the fact that they had been not supported by the RMS in one case, the fact that the duplication was depending on which MOU you looked at, the duplication of the bridge, that would then open the door to verifying that the bridge duplication is still part of the project. The comments here don't specifically say yay or nay for that. So look, I don't mind if it's noted off, Councillor Nelson, if you think that'll mean it'll go away. But quite frankly, these are issues that are alive, and people watching these proceedings are saying, these are simple questions, reasonable questions. Why can't we have a detailed response? Now, I'm sure that if this gets noted off, that there will be further investigation by the community on the matters in it. But the key point is this project has not been reconsulted, and the recommendations in the deep dive review that Council provided since 2019. And of course, the original project is not what we put up in September 2017. So, Mr. Mayor, I just hope you'll come out on the front foot and actually embrace the community. They want to meet with you, but you've turned them down on a number of occasions to talk about this project and these specific issues. So I invite you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett. Seeing you've summed up, they shall put the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment moved by Councillors Nelson and McLaughlin. Who's the amendment? Andrews. In favour of the councillors Andrews, Whipper, Nelson, McLaughlin and Gare. Those against? Oh, hang on, have you, hang on, I'll go back again. I thought you had your tick up, Councillor Whipper. Those in favour of the amendment, please raise your card. Councillors Nelson, Andrews, McLaughlin and Gare. Those against? Councillors Whipper, Scandrett, Turland and Halstead. I'll use my casting vote to declare the motion, the amendment carried. The amendment now becomes the motion. I'll put all those in favour of the motion to please raise their card. Councillors Andrews, McLaughlin, Nelson and Gare. Those against? Councillors Whipper, Scandrett, Halstead and Turland. I'll use my casting vote to pass the motion. The motion is now the motion. I'll ask somebody, and thank you those who are watching online, that will be going into closed committee for a period of time. I don't think it will be that long. Would somebody like to move we go into close, please? Move Councillors Whipper and McLaughlin. Put it, all in favour. Those against, carry.